Hey everyone, I'm Liz Fairy and today I'm going to show you how I made these removable wigs for my dolls. I love this technique because I can switch out the doll's hairstyle, and I can use this for pretty much any doll. And best of all, you don't need to use any glue for this method. And I hate using glue on my dolls, so this technique was perfect for me. This is going to be a 3-part tutorial series where I show you everything I've learned so far about making doll hair. In part 1, I show you the basic techniques for making a doll wig with yarn, and how to make a basic middle part wig with straight hair. In part 2, I'll show you how to make different styles of hair partitions, and in part 3, I'll show you how to curl and style the hair. Some things you'll need for this tutorial are some yarn to make the hair of the doll. I'm going to make the hair for my doll out of this yellow, soft and shiny yarn from Loops and Threads brand. Using a softer yarn for the hair makes this technique a little easier since the fibers of softer yarns tend to be easier to pull apart. Also, these yarns tend to be shiny, like real hair, but you can use any worsted or Aran weight yarn for this technique. You might want to use a different yarn for the wig cap. I'll be using cornmeal from Red Heart Super Saver for my wig cap. I'm going to crochet my own wig cap, but you don't need to know how to crochet for this technique. You could make the wig cap out of a stretchy knit material, which I'll show you how to do later in the video. I'll also be using this yarn as a base for my wefts, since it's a little stronger than the soft yarn. You'll need a pair of scissors to cut the yarn. You'll also need something to wrap the yarn around to make all the strands the same size. I'm using this piece of cardboard that I cut to the length I want to make the hair. If you like, you could use a grooming brush to give the yarn hair a more realistic look, and use a straightener to straighten or curl the yarn when you're done. To add the yarn to the wig and to make the wig cap, I'll be using a size E crochet hook, but again, you don't need to know how to crochet to use this technique. I'll just be using the hook to make it easier to pull the yarn through the wig cap. You could also use a yarn needle to pull the yarn through the wig cap. You'll also need a yarn needle to sew the wefts of the hair in place. And of course, you'll need the doll and the wig cap. Again, I'm using a crocheted wig cap. I'll also be using a hair elastic to finish the bottom of the wig cap, to make it easier to stay on the doll without sewing it on. But if you're making a wig for a bigger or smaller doll, you could just use some regular elastic sewn to the right size. First, I'm going to add the elastic to the crocheted wig cap. I'm going to leave the last row of the wig cap unfinished, so that I can add the hair elastic in the last row. So I have an unfinished wig cap here. If you want to see how to make this style of wig cap in more detail, check out my crochet wig cap tutorial. I did a couple of things differently for this wig cap though. First of all, I made the wig cap out of a thinner yarn in a similar color, so that the wig doesn't add too much bulk to the head of the doll. You could use crochet thread for this. I can't usually find crochet thread in the colors that I need, so I'm going to split a 4-ply Red Heart Super Saver yarn into 2-ply to make it into a crochet thread-like size. This technique won't work as well with the softer yarn because the fibers of softer yarns pull apart so easily, so try to use something like Red Heart. This may take a little while, especially if you're trying to do a large amount at a time, so I usually just do small amounts. I also made sure the wig cap is a little bigger than the doll's head size to make sure there's room for the yarn ends inside the wig cap. So I increased the wig cap for 4 rows, since I increased the doll's head for just 3 rows when I was making the doll. Then I did 4 rows of single crochet to elongate the wig cap, and I'm going to do my 5th row of single crochet around the hair elastic that fits around my doll's head, to make the bottom of the wig cap stretchy. So I'm going to do each stitch of this row around the hair elastic. And when I got to the end of that row, I slip stitched to the first stitch of my row, cut off the yarn, and sewed in the end. Next, I'll show you how to make a cloth wig cap. To do this, I'll use a stretchy knit material I got from an old sock, a hair elastic to make the band of the wig cap, some pins, a pair of scissors, my doll, and a needle and thread. I'm going to use a yarn needle and crochet thread, but you can use a regular needle and thread if you want. So first I'm going to fasten the material over the doll's head by wrapping it with the hair elastic around where the hairline would be. Then I'm going to cut off the material about 1/4 of an inch from the elastic to add a seam allowance. Then I'm going to fold and pin the material over the hair elastic, and using my yarn needle and some thread, I'll sew it down. Be careful not to sew the wig cap to the doll. Then I'll flip the material inside out so the sewn part is on the inside. And that's it. Now I can make a wig with this stretchy material wig cap the same way that I did with my crocheted wig caps. Because of the style of knit the sock was, I can insert my hook through the fabric and pull the yarn through pretty easily. But if you can't insert a hook through the material you used, just use a yarn needle to pull through each strand of the yarn for the hair instead. Next I'm going to cut the yarn to make the hair. To do that, I'm going to wrap the yarn around the cardboard that I cut to the length I want to make the hair. Then I'm going to cut through all the strands on the same side where I started wrapping the yarn. And now I have a bunch of strands that are double the length I want the hair to be. Next, I'm going to make these strands into wefts. To do that, I have a long strand of my split up crochet thread here. I'm going to tie all the strands that I just cut onto this long piece of thread to make a weft of yarn. I'm going to use my hook to do this, just to make it faster, but if you want, you could just use your hands. Just do it in the same way. Take a strand, fold it at the middle, take the loop at the middle and put it in front of the weft thread. Then take the tails of the strand and put them behind the weft thread so that the strand is almost wrapped around. Then put the tails through the loop from behind. And pull on the tails to tighten the loop. For my first weft, I used 30 strands of yarn, but if you made a differently sized doll, you may need to use more or fewer strands. Next, I'll attach the weft to the wig cap using the crochet hook. Once again, you could also use the yarn needle. So I'm going to use my hook to pull each strand of yarn in the weft through the stitches of the wig cap, about a stitch up from the bottom of the wig cap. Then, to make this first row of hairs appear to be coming from the inside of the wig cap, I'm going to pull each strand back to the inside through the bottom stitch. This will better cover up the wig cap. Hey everyone, Liz Fairy from the future here. It's been a couple of weeks since I made this wig, and something about it was just bothering me, so before we go on, I just want to show you a better way of doing the thing I literally just showed you how to do, using this pink wig from the next part of the video series. So if you notice, when I pull back the yarn hair in the first weft from the doll's face, you see the band of the wig under the first weft. And that's because of where we just threaded the strand. I showed you to weave the strand through the stitches of the first row above the edge, then through the bottom stitch of the wig cap. And as you can see, there's the band of the wig cap underneath. If we do that higher up though, in the next row, the strand will be coming from deeper in the wig cap. I'll show you what I mean. This time I'm going to pull the strand through up a row at the stitches of the second row. And then pull the strand back through at the stitches of the first row to the inside of the wig cap. And now, as you can see, the strands are now covering the elastic band because the weft is coming from slightly deeper in the wig cap. Then I'll just continue with the next weft, up a row from what you'll see me do next in the tutorial. The process is the same though. This technique really helps if you're making a swept back hairstyle, like a bun or a ponytail, where you'll be pulling the wefts to the back of the head. But if you're doing a wig where the hair falls forward, it won't matter as much. And now back to the rest of the tutorial. And now I just need to sew in the ends of the weft to secure it in place. Before I do that, I'm just going to stretch out the wig cap as much as I can to make sure I don't restrict the movement of the elastic. The weft on the inside of the cap should have a zigzag shape to allow the wig cap to stretch. Then I'm going to cut another 30 strands to make another weft of yarn of the same size. So I've tied the strands of each side of the wig cap into pigtails with some mini rubber bands just to keep them out of my way as I work. For the next weft, I'll pull the weft strands through in the same spot as the last row to attach it to the wig cap, so that these strands are just a little higher than the first ones. And you don't have to do this if you want, but to make the strands more secure, I'm going to pull them around the next row up to fasten them a little better to the wig cap. So I'm going to insert my hook into the spot where I just placed the strands, then out through the next row up, and pull the strands through those stitches. Then I'll pull on the strands to tighten them. Then when I finish placing the strands of the weft, I'll sew in the ends. And again, I'm going to stretch out the wig cap as much as I can before I sew the weft down to allow the wig cap to stretch. Alright, I finished placing and sewing in my next weft. Next I need to make the wefts for the middle part of the hair. To completely cover the wig cap with the middle part hair, I need to make sure there's a lot of strands at the middle part. So I'm actually going to double up the strands that I tie onto the weft. For my doll's middle part, I want to have 26 bunches of hair in each weft. So I need to cut 52 individual strands to make 26 doubled up bunches of hair. And I'll be making 2 wefts like this, one for each side of the middle part. So I'll actually need to cut 104 strands. But if you made a smaller or bigger doll, you might need a different amount of bunches. So I'll take 2 strands, line them up, and tie both onto the weft, the same way I did before with my crochet hook. And then I'm going to add the hair to the middle part, one side at a time. Once again, I've tied the strands on each side into pigtails to keep them out of my way as I work. For this weft, I'll place each of my doubled up strands right down the very middle of the wig cap. For the first strand of the middle part, the one that goes at the front of the head, I'm going to attach it the same way I did for the very first weft of yarn. I'm going to pull all 4 strands of the bunch in through the same spot that I added the first weft. Then I'm going to pull all 4 strands of the bunch in through the stitch at the bottom, so that the strands are all at the inside of the wig cap. Then I'm going to pull the next bunch through the same spot, but I'm just going to leave that strand where it is. Then I'll continue to add the rest of the strands the same way all the way down the middle of the wig cap. For the very middle back of the head, it might be a little too tight to pull in all 4 strands of yarn all at once if you're using a crocheted wig cap. Just pull the bunch through 1 or 2 strands at a time. When I get to the bottom of the back of the wig cap, I'll do the same thing I did at the front. I'm going to pull the last bunch through the same spot that I started the first weft. Then, just like I did for the first weft, I'll bring the bunch through the bottom to the inside of the wig cap. And when you're finished, sew in the ends to secure the weft, the same way as before after stretching out the cap. And then I'll do the same thing for the other side of the middle part. Once again, I've tied the hair up into pigtails on each side with my mini rubber bands. For this side of the middle part, I'll just pull the strands through the exact same place that I pulled the strands through for the last weft, so that you can't see the wig cap in between them at all. So now I've finished adding the hair to the wig. Next, I'm going to try to make the hair a bit more realistic. But of course, if you like the yarn hair look, you could just leave it as is. The first thing I need to do to make the yarn look more realistic is to pull apart each strand of yarn by untwisting it. You don't have to do this if you want, you could just skip to the next step, but if you do, you might lose a lot of length of the hair. So to preserve that length, I like to pull apart the strands, even if it takes a really long time. Now I've finished pulling apart each strand of the yarn. Now I'll use the grooming brush to brush out the fibers of each strand of the yarn. This will give the yarn a more hair-like appearance. This is also optional. If the character you're making has thick hair with a light curl, you could leave it as it is. So I'm going to take small bunches of the hair and slowly brush out each bunch from the tips down to the roots. Every once in a while, you'll need to pull a little ball of fluff off of the brush. Don't throw it away though. Save it and use it to stuff a pillow or another doll, especially if the yarn is a different color than white. It's virtually impossible to find fiberfill in different colors than white, and if you use fluff of the same color to stuff your crocheted dolls, you won't notice as much of the fiberfill color bleeding through the doll, particularly if you're not the best at maintaining high tension, and tend to make holey dolls. I've noticed this helps a lot with darker dolls. Next, I'm going to straighten the hair. This is also optional. If the character that you're making has hair with a wispy light curl, maybe this hair is already perfect. But I'm just going to make this character with long straight hair, so I'll use my straightener. Forgive the slightly dimmer lighting for this part. The yarn hair was so shiny that I had to turn off my main light to keep from blinding myself. Anyway, I have this mini straightener at a low temperature. Next, I'll take small bunches of the hair, just like I did when I was brushing it, and straighten each bunch of hair as close to the wig cap as I can get. I like to use the grooming brush to separate the hair into bunches and to give each bunch a little brush out after straightening. Sometimes I like to go over the hair bunch a second time since I'm using such a low temperature. And now the wig is done. I hope you liked this doll hair tutorial. If you did, give it a like and share it on social media. You could also check out some of my other more basic doll hair tutorials, or you could check out the tutorial for the doll I used in this video. Or if you want to support my work, consider donating to my Patreon page. You can get some pretty cool perks through Patreon, like seeing my videos before everyone else. Find more information about that at patreon.com/fairyrings. There's a lot of other ways you could customize your doll's wig, like curling the hair in different ways, adding the wefts in different ways to make different part styles, or different cuts you could give the hair. I'll talk more about that in the next part of the video. Be sure to let me know what you think of this wig technique in the comments section. And if you use this technique, I'd love to see your interpretation. Send me pictures at any of my social media pages. There'll be links in the description below. And if you want to keep seeing new videos like this in the future, subscribe to my channel and I'll see you all next time. Bye!